Hello and welcome back to our journey through Unit 2. Let's jump into Lesson 2.3. So as a reminder, in this unit, we are encouraging students to develop habits of reflection through examination of dilemmas and external resources. The goal of Lesson 2.3 is for students to describe role models, mentors, and anti-mentors. Sometimes on the Good Project, we jokingly call these tormentors. Students can reflect on how external forces such as role models, standards, or mission statements can help either inhibit or become avenues towards doing good work. So for this lesson, you are going to want to have on hand and queued up the 3Ms video. So you're going to want to make sure that you are in a spot where you can show a video to the class. And it's not listed here, but I think it should be, and we're going to change that in the lesson plans. You're going to want your list of top values from lesson 1.4. That comes up in our second activity, so you're going to want to have those on hand ahead of time. Okay. Let's go over some of the activities from this lesson. In the beginning opener, students are going to be identifying models, and this is when you're going to be talking about role models and mentors. This is also when you're going to, right off the bat, need that 3Ms video on hand. The link is right here in the lesson plans, but you can also find it on our website. The Good Work Project website. It's in our resource center under videos. And it's in the corral here. It's going to start off like this with Rosa Parks, Atticus Finch, and Mother Teresa. And as you can see, it's just a little bit over 4 minutes long. After identifying models, students will be identifying mission. And this is when you're going to need that list of top values from your class from lesson 1.4. So you're going to want to have that on hand so that students can consider the values and identify what they would consider to be the mission of the class. Thirdly, students are going to identify anti-mentors. So this is a little bit of the flip side of this first opener about models and mentors. This is going to be them thinking of somebody who they don't admire and who they don't want to be like. And finally, you'll take a few minutes just at the end of class to identify homework, which is a mirror test or reflective activity. So let's dive a little bit deeper into each one of these 3 activities that you'll be doing in class. So again, you start off by identifying models. You have 15 minutes in this section of the class, and this 3Ms video is going to take up almost 5 of that. After the video, you're going to lead a class discussion about role models, explain the difference between what a role model is and a mentor, and how you can kind of get the same types of things out of these. Not everybody's going to have somebody who's necessarily a mentor, but we can still learn from these around us who inspire us to do good work. This is a good time to model how you have your own role models and mentors in your life. The examples here are my mother taught me to never go to bed angry. My soccer coach taught me to be selfless and think about others. You don't have to use these examples. You can use your own examples from your own life, from people who inspire you to do good work. Students are going to work individually on this activity. They're going to think about people who they know who inspire them, and they're going to write down the messages that they learned from each of those people. If they don't feel like writing, they should be encouraged to do an artistic representation, make an infographic, write a poem, whatever works for them on that day to get the idea across of connecting people who they look up to and the messages specifically that they got from those people that make them feel like they're role models or they're mentors to them. You're going to come back together after a few minutes and share as a group, and then you can add those reflections to students' good work portfolios. After talking about models, students are going to be identifying mission. You're going to have your list of top values from lesson 1.4 from your class, and you're going to divide the class into 3 groups. And each group's going to look at that list, consider the values, and they are going to try to come up with what they think the mission of the class is. As you'll see here, we have multiple prompts for them to consider. What are our shared values? What are our goals? And how do these values support our goals? What are some of the obstacles that get in the way of us accomplishing those goals? How can we overcome these obstacles? We've been talking about obstacles in a lot of the lessons leading up to this one. This is a time where it comes back up again and they can kind of apply it to their own mission and what they value as a class. After students work on this in their groups, they're going to come back together and have a class discussion about these individual conversations. After this, you're going to be the third and final activity for the class of the day. Students are going to go into pairs and they're going to think of somebody, fictional as you'll note here or otherwise, who they do not admire, who they would never consider to be a role model, who they want to be the opposite of because they think that they are a terrible example of good work. And it's very, very important that ahead of time you caution students not to mention anyone in school. This isn't a time to be mean. This is a time to take this lesson seriously and think about, there are people that we've seen on TV and in books and read about in the newspaper who we would never want to be like, but what can we learn from these bad examples? There's some prompts here that they can think about, who is this? What is their work? Why don't you admire them? What are their qualities? Can you offer an example? This might be the most important, of how you might do things differently if you were in their shoes. And again, please bring the class back together and ask students to share the results of these reflections. The homework for this lesson 2.3 is for students to conduct a mirror test. You'll want to emphasize to students that this is a practice of reflection that they could revise every month or every other month. This is something that they can take with them in their journey as students and as workers. So students are going to consider what they learned in class discussion. What did they learn from mentors and role models? What did they learn from anti-mentors? What do they know about how values can support goals and how you can identify obstacles towards those goals and come up with a plan for getting around those obstacles and still accomplishing good work? Students can think of the following questions. You can also, instead of making this just a homework assignment, this could be a project that they do over a couple of weeks. They could do it a couple of times. It doesn't have to be just a one-time activity for them. I think if I was teaching this and I was stretched for time, it's hard to pick, but I think I would probably drop the last exercise of anti-mentors here and give them more time probably for the second activity of identifying mission. I think that this one is something that students get really excited about, and I could see this third activity being a little bit redundant with the first activity, it being just, instead of thinking of the pros, think of the cons, etc. It's like the reverse of that. You could also, if you wanted to keep this part, you could swap this for homework and instead not assign the mirror test, and you could assign this anti-mentors reflection as homework. I think also that this second, it does, and the number 3 still does address the goals of the lesson, but this second activity, it's one that students just get really excited about anytime they get to talk about the goals and come up with their own identity as a class. I think that when students get passionate about something like that, which they tend to do with this activity that we've heard when other teachers implement it, I think that always ties well into learning outcomes for students. And this specific exercise of identifying mission will help students put the pieces of good work together, and that's going to tie into later discussions of responsibility in Unit 3. So again, this would probably be the last one I would drop if I was stretched for time and I wasn't sure if I could fit everything in. I would make sure that this was one that made it into the day for sure. So as always, please feel free to adapt this to your age group, to your particular class, to what you're learning already in the other parts of your curriculum, and have fun.